Hello, I'm Shervon Laurice. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Maryland, and I have been a therapist for about 22 years. And primarily, the group of people that I work with are dealing either with depression, anxiety, or trauma, usually PTSD, complex PTSD. And a lot of my work centers around helping people to manage the symptoms for those diagnoses using talk therapy as well as yoga therapy, which is what I'm trained in secondarily as a certification. And for some other people who choose it, is also psychedelic therapy, either from microdosing or in more of an intensive macro way if they want to step into a psychedelic assisted therapy program. And so that's a lot of what I do. And so it's interesting to be here to talk about PCOS, this topic in particular, because probably up until 15 years ago, I had not heard of it. And got my first client probably 15, 14 years ago who had it, who I then had to go and like take a deep dive in and learn about it. And so I've had more clients over the years since then who have either been formally diagnosed or suspect that they have PCOS. And so it becomes a very whole body, holistic way of working with a client, because it's not just mental health itself, right? So talk therapy, or what we also call psychotherapy, is about really helping people to come to terms with that diagnosis and what it means for their lives, because it could affect appearance, it could affect how they feel as they move about the world, it could affect whether or not they have children, right? And so it's really helping people with the mental aspect of what that diagnosis means or could mean for their lives, and then teaching them new skills that they can add to their mental health or mental wellness toolbox to take care of themselves long term. And so one of the things I developed in my practice, because of the three different modalities that I work with, is the 3M method, in which we bring together mental wellness from the mental health background, as well as mindfulness practices from the yoga perspective, particularly yoga therapy. And those mindfulness practices will include things like meditation and yoga nidra, as well as what we consider yoga here in the States, movement on a yoga mat. But it really encompasses, I find, in working with clients, especially who have depression, anxiety, and trauma, to use meditation and mindfulness practices like breath work and yoga nidra, because those three things help to calm the central nervous system. And that's where we want to be, to lower cortisol levels and to lower the stress response in our bodies and to increase the window of tolerance for our emotions. And so those are the usual practices that can be my go-to, especially in this arena. And then the third of the 3M method is microdosing. Those three things together helps people to really have a holistic approach to their mental health and to their mental wellness. And I usually will then work with, as I'm doing talk therapy with people, I will then work with them to create a program for them to do on a daily or weekly basis that helps them to maintain that mental wellness and to balance their central nervous system and to still move forward in their lives to reach their goals. So it's a fun process to figure out like what things work best for people and what things they can do ongoing. You know, some people are not going to be as committed to getting on a yoga mat every day, right? But maybe they can do a meditation that's 15 minutes every day. So we just have to figure out with each person what's best. Sometimes people get stuck in either their personal lives or their professional lives, or it could be both. There is this running idea or joke in the American vernacular called the midlife crisis, where people get to like right around age 40 and the question becomes really existential. Like, I've done all the things I'm supposed to do, but I'm not really happy. So what does this life even mean? How can I change it? That kind of thing. And I think a lot of people get there nowadays, especially because the idea of the American dream is starting to shift, And so if you've done the years of schooling and started a career and moved up the ranks, and now you're at a place where you feel like you want to be, but you're not happy, you're starting to ask those questions of, okay, what does it all mean? How do I find that level of happiness? Or you get to right around 35 to 45, and your body starts to give you signals that it's not well, right? It's not running at the optimal level. And so for women, that can come out of trying to do all the things and be all the things all at once, having a career, taking care of family, raising kids, whatever that might be, or going back to school while working full time. It's a lot for us to juggle. And so for some women, they feel like they're stuck in knowing or understanding what their next move should be for them, right? If they really want to change things in their lives, how do they go about it? I was working with a client some years ago who was working, I forget where, but it was a high level paying job, but she'd always wanted to be a business owner. She wanted to be an entrepreneur, but the fear of not being able to make it financially was there. And so I worked with her to help her really figure out, well, what do you really want? And can you start that dream business part-time first, on the side while you're working, so that it feels safer to do? And she was able to do some psychedelic work with me and really get her mindset shifted, changed, so that she could step into what she felt like was her purpose. And so she did. This was some years ago, and she has gone ahead and started that business. So it's that kind of thing. It's really being able to work with women in particular and letting them know that there are options. Yes, you can change things. And you can start with first taking care of yourself. And when you can optimize how you show up for yourself and take care of yourself, you can then move forward and make the bigger changes in your life. I see mental wellness as a foundation because if you are not feeling balanced, if you are not feeling well, it's going to affect everything else in your day and everything else in your life. And so the stability comes from knowing that you have some say in how you feel, that you have some power that you can step into in order to take care of yourself, that you are not just in the throes of life and life just happens to you. There are some things you can do in order to have that mental stability or that mental foundation. And so that can be besides having a therapist, right? So therapy is not as much a taboo in the Black community in particular as it used to be when I was coming up, right? And so more and more young people are adding therapy in whatever ways that they can based on their own economics, so that they can have that support in their mental health. But you can't be with your therapist all the time, right? And so taking what you learn in therapy, and what I do with people is a lot around mindfulness and spirituality, is taking the things that you know work for you and doing them on a daily basis. So the mental health foundation for me is really, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting that 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep every day that helps your body to recharge and to heal while you're sleeping, so that when you wake in the morning, you feel more refreshed? And so if people are saying no to that, then we work together to figure out, okay, what do you need in order to get your sleep cycle, your sleep hygiene back in line, right? That could be as simple as making sure you turn down the lights in the evening, prepare for sleep, go to bed at the same time every night, setting your alarm to wake up at the same time every morning, and actually honoring your quote unquote bedtime, all right? But for some people, it's even more than that, right? It could be hormonal. It could be that PCOS has derailed your sleep. And so how do you then manage that from that perspective, right? Do you need to add certain kinds of therapies into your day-to-day life so that you can sleep better? One of the great things about a yoga nidra practice is yoga nidra helps people fall off to sleep better. The other part of that is, how are we nourishing ourselves, right? And so taking the whole idea of body image and appearance out of it, we all have to eat. And so are we making the choices for foods that help us feel better in our bodies and feel better mentally? So giving you an example, if we're eating sugar or high processed foods more often than not as our food source, it could lead to racing thoughts, increased anxiety, or increased symptoms of depression, right? And if trauma is something that has been experienced, it could agitate trauma symptoms as well. Also, too much sugar has a negative impact on the symptoms of PCOS. And so helping people to shift how they nourish themselves, small ways. It doesn't have to be big ways to start. One little thing at a time. Taking out one kind of processed food and incorporating more vegetables. Just starting there. Or herbal teas, which has been a part of our history since time immemorial, right? So if someone is already kind of familiar with herbs, helping them to see how to incorporate those herbs into their lives, because so many things are anti-inflammatory, right? Having like Tulsi tea or soursop tea, incorporating mint tea, or even any of the green teas can all help to lower inflammation in the body and help people feel better, right? And so that's another foundational thing, is nourishment. Movement. Not having to get into the gym, but 20-minute walk in your day. Maybe you break it up, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, but just getting a little bit of movement so that the body feels better. Making sure you get some sun, because the sun is what regulates our circadian rhythm for sleep. So if you actually spend some time in the sun in the morning, so going for a walk in the morning, then you set or reset your circadian rhythm so that in the evening when the sun starts going down, your body knows it's time to basically power off, right? So that your sleep cycle gets more regulated. So there are all these things that we can do to help with sleep that most people don't really think about. About shifting how they see themselves, usually. I think we all carry some limiting beliefs based on either ethnicity or race, culture and how we were raised, or just being raised in westernized culture, right? It's somewhere in our mindset and our thought process that we can't do something or that we shouldn't do something. And once we get to a certain age, we have to start to challenge those automatic thoughts, to challenge the way we actually think about the world around us, think about ourselves and our careers, our families, our lives. And so it has to start with, wait a minute, is that a thought that I believe, or am I carrying that thought from my childhood based on what someone else has said or something I've read? You know? And so it starts there. And then from there, a shift in mindset. It's really this constant practice of catching your thoughts. I love working with people who realize the power of words, which starts with thought. And our thoughts, as some people like to say, our thoughts become things, right? We create starting with our thoughts, and our thoughts fuel the words that we say and the actions that we take. And so there was a famous quote, if you believe you can, then you will. If you believe you can't, then you won't, right? But it all starts here. And so working with people, especially who have careers in the business world and they're trying to really move those careers forward or to start a business and grow it, it's really about reshaping one's thought process, checking in with yourself to know whether or not the thought that just ran through your mind was more of a limiting belief or an expansion belief. And then when you realize it's a limiting belief, replace it with something else, something either more neutral or even more positive. So some of that is the activities that you do in order to bring about more clarity. So our lives are really noisy nowadays, right? Besides television, besides radio, there's the internet, social media, people who engage us by email, and everything is like almost an emergency all the time. And what I offer people is this idea of make space for quiet, make space for silence in your day. And that can be first thing when you get up, which is great for meditation. Because if you can create space or silence in your day, it allows you to hear your inner voice. It allows you to listen for your inner voice. If you have connection to a certain spiritual community, that is like listening to your higher power or to God. Either way, you've got to create quiet. You've got to create some space for yourself. And that's where you can, in that area of your life where you create every day this moment, it could be 15, 20 minutes of silence. You get to hear. You really do get to hear. That can be carved out in the mornings. If you take a 20-minute walk, don't go with headphones, right? Go on that walk, listen to nature. Don't be like talking to somebody on your phone. Just really allow that 20 minutes to be a time of quiet and movement. You'd be surprised at how much you get to hear, and the questions that you've already called out to the universe get answered. But our days are so busy and so noisy, so many people do not get that opportunity. And you have to consciously do it nowadays. So the best way to sustain breakthroughs is to continually take a conscious look at what you're doing that got you there and ask yourself, well, now that I'm here, does this still serve me in this moment? And if it doesn't, what else would serve me better? Right? So for instance, a person who's trying to create a business, and they've got, say, mentors or people in their life who are helping them along the way. They get to a certain level in their business. It might then be time to assess, is there someone else I need to bring in to help me get to that next level, right? And so that's a way to sustain the achievement that you've already made, and if you're looking to go higher, to then shift to that next level. For people who have been working on themselves, the best way to maintain those achievements is to continue to do what you're doing. Meditation is one of those practices. It helps us to elevate, right? It helps us to shift our mindsets and to see ourselves more like the way God created us. And when we get some traction going with that, you don't stop meditating, you continue, because there's so much more to learn, there's so much more to see, there's so much more growth that can happen, you know. And so those are some of the ways that I encourage people, even when they're completing therapy or whatever work they've been doing with me, is we look at, okay, so what's been working for you? And what do you need to carry forward into your life to continue to be on this trajectory? And then sometimes we're able to say, okay, this is where you've gotten to, and you might want to consider doing this kind of work into the future. That maybe that kind of work is not work that I offer, but they can seek that out into their future. You know, and so that's the kind of work I enjoy doing, is to bring people to the level they want to get to, and hopefully beyond, right, in the work that I do. And then let them go and fly, because, you know, they need to try some of these things out for themselves. And for some people, they don't need to be in therapy ongoing forever, right? They can always come back, but you hope that the tools that they've learned helps to carry them into their future in a positive way. So, yeah. Final thoughts. I guess really the main thing I want people to take away is that they have so much more power than they think they do. A diagnosis is just a diagnosis based on symptoms that you have. And so figuring out how to best take care of yourself is always going to be the key. And that can shift over time, right? You might get diagnosed with PCOS in your 20s, and over 20 years, you get into your 40s and you realize there's some other stuff going on for you, because maybe you're noticing perimenopause on top of symptoms of PCOS, right? So then you have to learn a new way to take care of yourself, right? So it's always doing the work of paying attention to who you are inwardly and making whatever shifts or changes you need to make. So they can contact me through my practice, which is Restore Tranquility, restoretranquility.com. And on that page is all of my information and a way to book a free consultation. And me and my colleague who run the practice, they can work with either of us. We're both trained in mindfulness practices, as well as psychedelic therapy and microdosing practices. We both offer coaching as well as psychotherapy.